Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse episode 292. I am Peter and joining me is not Matt, unfortunately. Matt is helping his brother who's moving back to the mainland from Hawaii this week, so he's tied up for a week.
Suck, right? Moving away from Hawaii.
I mean, depends on your reasons, I suppose. Maybe.
I mean, sure, I'm sure people do it for lots of good reasons, but just as a general rule, I've never been to Hawaii, but generally speaking, it's considered one of those places that, oh, yes, that would be a good place to go and live.
I mean, all of his family are not there, so maybe it's just a loneliness thing rather than anything else. And I'm sure
I
it's
was
not.
under the impression that Matt's dad lives in Hawaii, but I could be wrong.
Oh, you may be right. Or is it not your stepdad? It doesn't matter. We're just speculating aimlessly here.
Yeah.
Another good reason, and this is not the case in this particular instance, but another good reason could be that you've developed some sort of skin condition that the heat in Hawaii is potent against, so you need to go back.
That's just called being ginger.
Aye, so yeah, you would.
I can take the hint.
Well, there you go. So Carter's here, just in case that wasn't obvious at this point.
Yeah. I'm still knocking around.
Yeah, so as a DC Comics podcast, we get together, we talk about the books that came out this week, what little of them there is in this particular case. Obviously there's a few that we don't read, and it's just anyone who reads comics regularly knows that sometimes the way things work out is you just have a light week, even if the company's week isn't light necessarily, it just works out that way based on what books you're actually reading at any given time.
Yep.
But so what's coming up today, you might ask? Well, coming up today we have Detective Comics 1052, we have Superman Son of Kal-El issue 8, we got Batgirls issue 3, Carter read a couple of stories from Urban Legends, Batman Urban Legends issue 12 that is, and of course I read Batman Catwoman issue 10, and that's it. That's the 5 books, and only 2 of them I believe are ones that we both read, so fun time. Detective and Superman, come on, why are you looking so confused?
No, I was the problem was I couldn't remember the full list of, as like, what was the third book that you read that I didn't?
Okay, that's very good.
Because obviously I know I read Urban Legends and you read Batcat, and I couldn't remember what the other one was already. It's just gone. I'll find out when we get there.
Well, that's the plan. That is the plan for the day. So yeah, really weird week because less books, less people. And well, the hope was because there is some news to get to, but because of the news, we thought there'd be solicits for this week. We thought, oh, that's great, that'll be an hour long, that's the show. Easy peasy, right? The show's going to be healthy because solicits are going to be there. There's been no solicits, which means next week, when there's more books, we're going to have a super long episode, so look forward to that.
I will say, I don't think it's that bad next week either.
Oh, is it not? Okay.
No, I think it's a relatively light week too. Which, is nice.
We'll find out at the end of the show. We'll look properly, but so alas, here we are. So we have plenty of time this week, so why would we ever not do the ComiXology top 10? I mean, we got time for it, so...
Well, maybe the last time ever.
Life will find a way. I'll find the top 10. I'll find something to use on a weekly basis. I'm not giving up this opening segment. It's just it's a good icebreaker. It sets the mood. Everyone is into it.
Everyone does not like it. Everyone is not into it.
People love it. I get messages on a daily basis, basically talking about how it saves some lives and how
you got one message once that said, "Hey, I don't mind this segment."
No, life-saving is what it was. It's literally people have been standing on a ledge on a building saying they're going to jump, and someone whips out their phone and plays an episode, and they play the ComiXology top 10, and it takes them back off the ledge. What
happened there was they went, oh shit, it could be worse. I could be having to listen to that every week.
So yes, ComiXology top 10 at the time of recording is as follows. Number 1 is Star Wars Darth Vader issue 20.
I'm happy with that, although I'm surprised. It's been, it's rare that the Star Wars books are the top book. They're usually top 5, but...
Number 2 is Devil's Reign, issue 4. That's the Tom Taylor Marvel book, I think, right? That's the one he's doing?
No, that's Dark Ages.
Oh, what's
Devil's Reign is Darsky's Daredevil run event.
Ah, okay. There you go.
That's old Chip, yeah.
There you go, Chip's doing well. Number 3, the currently highest DC book on the list. Care to guess what it might be?
Is it Batcat?
Nope.
Superman, son of Kal-El?
It is. Tom Taylor's name carries some weight these days, you see. Superman, son of Kal-El, doing not too bad. So that's issue 8 from this week, number 3.
That is actually very good, because Superman books, obviously they sell pretty well, but they still, as a rule, even at the best, tend to sell lower than Batman and Detective.
Batman for sure. I'd say Detective, I think, maybe rotates with it depending on who's on what book and what's going on.
Sure. But if it's a run of Detective that people are into, it tends to sell better than most Superman books still.
I feel like people are into this run of Detective right now as well.
I do, yeah.
So that's a good thing. Number 4 is Critical Role Vox Machina issue 5. So people who know what that is know what it is and care about it, and everyone else can move on.
Surely you know what it is. Critical Role.
I do know what it is, but I'm saying, like, if you don't know what it is, you just don't care about it.
That's fair.
It may as well be a Fortnite comic.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That is no shade towards Critical Role. I'm sure it's enjoyable.
I've never watched a Critical Role because I have no interest in watching people play, tabletop RPGs like that in an unproduced format that it is. Not knocking it, just not for me. But I did. I have watched like 2/3 of the Amazon show that they've been putting out, the animated one. It's pretty good. It's, not mind blowing, but solid, enjoyable enough.
Number 5 is Amazing Spider-Man issue 88. BEY.
I was wondering why that was so much lower than Amazing Spider-Man usually is. It is because it's a point BEY.
Yes, it's your sort of event going on, sort of extra tie-in issue.
I don't even know what event that is.
I'm going to assume it's Beyond it stands for, but I could be wrong.
But I've never heard of an event called Beyond. Let's
have a look at the cover. Spider-Man, it says Beyond tie-in outside, yeah, so it's Beyond it's called.
Okay, I have no idea what that is. I'm very out of the loop.
The Slingers is the title of the issue.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, okay? Like, they're determined to have Spider-Man have more issues in total than every single Batman comic combined, because they're just pumping them out weekly just to
they'll get there soon enough for this, right?
Number 6, back to DC, Batman Catwoman, issue 10, still selling relatively well, based on the name value, I suspect. Number 7 is Detective Comics, issue 1052. That's the lowest it's been during this arc, but only by one space, so
yeah, I have to assume it just means the other stuff's selling better rather than this issue selling particularly worse.
Yeah, very. And even if it is worse, it's like this is literally the midpoint of this 12-issue thing. Now, only dropping by one space halfway through is not a big deal. I would say.
It's a weird thing. Obviously, you do expect drop off issue to issue, story by story in every comic. That's factored in till it hits a base threshold, but that's usually significantly lower than this.
Yeah, it's just
I do wonder if the fact that it was weekly and it had to be ordered so far in advance compared to monthly, that maybe it hasn't seemed as dramatic. That wouldn't affect digital sales anyway. So
yeah, it will affect digital sales, but I do wonder if what's funny is that they didn't get around to selling the first batch of issues until after the final order cut off of probably the second months of books. So I wonder if, like, at least from the physical sales perspective, if the third month is notably down across all 4 issues just because the final order cut off for that month would have come after they started selling the first part of the 12-issue series. So I wonder if, like, that affected it, or maybe it went up because then people don't seem to want to buy it and maybe they ordered more. I don't know.
Possible, yeah.
But I suspect that you might see like a very consistent physical number for Detective for the first 8 issues of the run, and then it'll go up or down depending on how well it actually started selling.
It's very plausible that could happen, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Detective's not like an unsafe bet for comic shops, I don't think. They kind of know how well it's going to do at this point.
Yeah.
New Mutants issue 24 is number 8. Number 9 is The Secret X-Men issue 1.
No idea what that is.
I've clicked on it. I guess it's a new series. Yeah.
Not a one shot or anything? I'm surprised because I thought the new series would have held off until... Because you got like Gillen coming in to take over the main book in March or
Nothing
April.
about the cover or the title or the description suggests it's anything other than an ongoing. It just says issue 1. There's no limited. There's no, and it's a regular size, regular priced comic. The looks of it.
Have a look on League of Comic Geeks. See what they.
But it could be a one shot. But it doesn't say anything on the cover on ComiXology. And then number 10, just while you're looking that up, X Deaths of Wolverine issue 2 is the number 10 comic.
Yeah, that's all right. No, it seems to be a new series.
Yeah, there you go. The Justice League Annual was number 12, just to sort of round out what the DC stuff is. Batgirls is coming in at, 30, 40, 50, number 16. Then Joker's at 17, Urban Legends at 18. So basically the rest of the DC books are clumped together. Then a couple of slots down after that, you've got I Am Batman and Robin. So most of the DC books are on the first page of the top selling books right now. So
I would be interested to see Robin's, how much the sales digitally are different on, because I'm assuming you're still checking the UK ComiXology.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how differently that is on the US ComiXology, because Robin's comes out on the DC Universe Infinite, like digitally like a month before as well. So I wonder if there's enough subscribers that are interested to just read it on there that it impacts its places on the ComiXology charts.
It might depend on what format you prefer.
Yeah, it might, yeah.
And stuff. Oh no, actually I think that's the same format. I think it's still just released as a full issue. I don't know if it's... I think
it is just a full issue, yeah.
Yeah, it's not split up as a digital, as a lot of digital books are. I don't know. Honestly, I just checked the US ComiXology, which is a very similar top 10. Although no, but that Darth Vader book's a few entries down, interestingly. But it's mostly the same books in the top 10, just jumbled around a little bit. But Robin's is actually one row up. It's actually technically better selling in the US ComiXology store.
No, that's fascinating. It tells me that maybe a lot of people still just prefer to buy them on ComiXology rather than subscribe to DC Universe Infinite, which, because the people who that book is kind of appealing to tend to be the sort of people I feel would be interested in a subscription.
Maybe some people, even though it's digital, maybe some people just like collecting. They like just, adding issues to the library. It's just what they like
nothing
doing.
wrong with that. Well, till Amazon screw it all over this week.
So that's the ComiXology top 10 for the week. Happy days. Yeah, so there was one bigger bit of news, really. Direct DC news that came out this week. And it's basically just giving a name to something we kind of already knew about, or at least suspected heavily, is that obviously Death of the Justice League from Williamson and Co. in issue 75, the final issue of the current Justice League series, was going to lead into some kind of event. That was a very obvious thing from the second they announced all that stuff. Now we have a title, and it's a title that, funnily enough, we have joked about them using before. In fact, there was a time when Metal, we were speculating, might be called this, and that title is Dark Crisis. They're finally using that title. And this is kind of...
I love Metal, and I still stand by that. Could have still been the name of what they called this.
It could have been called that, yeah. It would have made no difference. Obviously, they get to use it now because they didn't use it before, so happy days in that sense. So this is obviously going to be Williamson, and it's a 7-issue book, although there's a couple of little lead-ins that are coming before that as well. The traditional Free Comic Book Day special, which, it says Dark Crisis issue 0 special, but it's got multiple writers and stuff, which to me suggests that there's probably going to be like a 10-page, actual issue 0 Dark Crisis story, and then a couple other things that probably are related to stuff that's going to be happening around Dark Crisis, but from other books, so it'll be other writers and artists and whatever else.
The most interesting thing about this, potentially, the comic book day, Free Comic Book Day thing specifically, is the fact that DC are continuing ahead with participating in Free Comic Book Day, which is a diamond endeavor.
No, that's good. They see some value in it, clearly. Especially for something like this, but this is our big event. Here's a teaser, for free. Come and buy the rest of it. Thank you. And then there's also another prelude issue coming out at the end of May. So Free Comic Book Day is 7th of May, so that's at the start of May. And then May 31st, there's going to be a one-shot called Justice League Road to Dark Crisis issue 1, which, when this is all collected, I assume whatever the short story in the Free Comic Book Day issue and then this one-shot will be at the start of the trade, and then you'll get the 7 issues of the main.
And if they're not in the trade, it's because they're utterly inessential.
Yes, if they're important, they'll be in the trade, and if they're not, then you shouldn't care.
Yeah.
But obviously we'll cover them, and part of the fun of these big events is the build up and what they're doing. They did reveal a few things. Pariah is going to be the villain and is going to be wielding the darkness, the great darkness beyond the multiverse, because he wants to bring back his multiverse, which is now going to be known as Multiverse 2, which is another multiverse in the greater omniverse. DC, I love how tangled a web this is becoming.
I give it 10 years. 10 years and this is getting blown to oblivion. Not this specifically, but everything, because they're building so much, is getting blown to oblivion, back down to just, no, it's one Earth, there's no multiverse, there's nothing.
Yes,
it's the only logical conclusion.
Yeah, but that'll last for about another decade or two, and then they'll bring everything back. This is the cycle. This is the cycle.
It's the DC cycle, yeah.
This is important. So yeah, I mean, there's some covers here to look at. There's a nice big 2 sort of wraparound cover to look at with a lot of characters. What's very interesting about that one, I think in particular, is all the Justice League members, not all of whom had coffins in the previous art and stuff that was released, but so I don't know if they're all technically dead or if it's just more of a symbolic thing, but all of the current Justice League are sort of like in the sky as like Force ghosts, and then underneath them you got John Kent, Jessica Cruz, Wonder Girl, Captain Marvel, Nightwing, Wally West. You got all these characters sort of front and center on all
the legacy characters.
Yeah, except Hal, who's not a legacy character, but he's there. I guess he's like the uncle, the cool uncle, who's going to be around to help all the legacy characters out. But everyone else is legacy.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of a legacy character, technically.
I'm not counting someone who took a main mantle in the Silver Age as legacy. I mean, I know there is a Golden Age Green Lantern, but Hal Jordan is the main Green Lantern of the modern mythos.
While I agree with the sentiment there, I think the not counting someone who took the legacy of the Silver Age, that's maybe a bit, because then you're saying Barry Allen isn't a legacy character.
I feel similar about Barry Allen. I think Barry Allen and Hal Jordan are in the same boat. I think they kind of became the de facto Flash and Green Lantern. And we think of Jay and Allen as the Golden Age, as the alternate Earth, as the JSA version.
It's only because of time being removed enough from it that they spent a long enough time as...
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt that some 70-year-olds are like gritting their teeth at what I'm saying and be like, how dare you?
I just think fundamentally they are objectively legacy characters.
Yes. If we're going absolute on technical merits alone here, yes, they are technically legacy characters. But you put Hal Jordan next to Damian Wayne, Dick Grayson, Wally West, Jessica Cruz, and co. Like, he sticks out as being of a very different generation.
Yeah, but if you throw Alan Scott in that picture as well, then all of a sudden you go, yeah, he's a legacy character. So it's just about context.
Is Alan Scott a legacy character?
No, I said you'd be saying that about Hal if Alan Scott was in the image.
Okay. Well, I think the other thing about Hal specifically compared to Barry is that because the Green Lantern mythos also is so removed from what Alan Scott's Green Lantern ring is, I think there is a clear distinction.
Yeah, this is why I was saying I kind of agree with your sentiment. I think there's a fair argument about Hal, but I think
because he is billed as the first human Green Lantern in the sense that he is the first member of the Green Lantern Corps who is a human.
Yes, and which is why I actually agreed with your sentiment overall about Hal, and now I'm just arguing for the sake of it. But the line about the taking the mantle in the Silver Age is the part I take umbrage with, because then you're discounting Barry.
Fair. I mean, and I would agree Barry feels more legacy, and I think that's partly just because you see a lot more of Barry with Jay in a lot of Flash comics. There's a more of a family vibe.
They have a relationship. Yeah, at least these days, obviously they do.
Yeah, whereas Hal and Alan, like, I mean, they've interacted, but I don't really think of them as having a lot of like dinners with each other or something, you know. Yeah. So there's a bit of a different sort of feeling there. Anyway, it sprawls off out of the back page with some villains, and at the bottom there's more legacy heroes, just sort of like, you know, tons of them, all just sort of lined up. So I do like a lot of these characters that are kind of featuring on this main page. I love that Jessica Cruz, who is my favorite Green Lantern, who became my favorite Green Lantern throughout Rebirth, and I don't think she's been, you know, obviously she was in Justice League Odyssey, which withered and died quite some time ago. I don't feel she's been that prominent in anything for a while, so it's kind of nice to see her on the front of the cover of this. Obviously, Dick and Wally featuring heavily next to John Kent as being what we think of, because we think of Wally and Dick as the two main like legacy characters. They are the I don't know, the team captains of legacy heroes in DC Comics.
In the modern sense, definitely, yeah.
So them being there with John Kent, who's kind of front and center because he just became Superman, is kind of a big deal. Then you got Damian and other characters. Obviously, Black Adam's the other one that sticks out as not really being a legacy character, in a sense. But that's cool.
Yeah, not really.
I'm sure Shazam and Black Adam being on the cover, though, is again going to be relevant in some capacity in whatever they're going to do in the plot. But it's just interesting to look at it and see what's there. Villains wise, we got an interesting bunch.
Yeah. Obviously, Pariah.
Yeah, he's the one at the back, right in the red, looking down. But you also got is that Black Hand there? I'm seeing.
I've got an article here that has a bunch of them.
Oh, is there just listed? They'll go on then.
Yeah, it's a separate article. You got Eclipso.
I see Eclipso. Yep. He's on the left.
Spectre, who is, I think, it mentions here that Pariah is like pulling the strings of them, but because obviously Spectre is not inherently a villainous character, but he is included with the villainous lineup here.
Where's Spectre on this cover? I don't see Spectre.
Maybe it's a separate image they released.
Oh, maybe yeah. I don't see him on this cover. I see what I think is I see Darkseid, obviously. I see Doomsday in the back. I see what's his face?
That is not helpful.
What? Ares. I was like
Ares, yes.
The Wonder Woman villain. God damn it! I was just trying to think of who his name was. It just escaped my mind.
Necron. The Empty Hand is apparently the guy with the horns.
Okay. Oh yeah. That I mean, I wouldn't have remembered it, but now you've said it. Yeah, he's in current Justice League Incarnate. He's been in the last couple issues.
Right. Okay.
So that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And
this article also mentions the Upside Down Man from Justice League Dark.
Oh, he's not in this image, but cool.
No, and it mentions Deathstroke as well in this article.
Yeah, he's on the cover. He's got like a sort of like a half and half thing with Batman. He's where the Batman face becomes Deathstroke in the middle.
Yes, I see it.
So cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm into it. I'm sure we'll have fun with this. Hopefully, this is Williamson sort of like ascending to an even bigger type of story. But at the same time, I don't think Williamson's as capable as some of the other writers who have tackled stories like this. So I expect I'm going to have fun, but it's probably going to be, flawed in places.
Yeah, I want to be excited because, big event, but I have struggled with a lot of Williamson's big concept stuff. Especially recently, I kind of found a lot of it kind of a mess. And I've struggled to enjoy it. So I'm not actually that excited for this. I'll try it, but yeah, it's hard for me personally to be excited. That's
fine. You can be the Debbie Downer.
I know. That's what I'm good at.
So yeah, we'll go with that. But hey, cool. So yeah, that's Dark Crisis. The free issue and the prelude issue are coming in May, and then the main series, I think they said starting in June. I'd expect it to anyway. So
I'll probably run for the rest of the year then.
Yeah, up until final issue. And assuming there's no delays, the final issue should be in December.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's cool. Not quite news per se, but there was kind of a weird scare that Jeff Johns was a dickbag this week, but then it turned out to be a false alarm because EVS was using a 10-year-old photo to suggest that he was hanging out with Jeff Johns.
Yeah. Obviously, there's been other stories about Johns over the past few years, but uncorroborated. But if this had ended up being true,
this was different though. This was just like he's going to go on a known like neo-Nazis podcast. Like that was like a
yes.
It looked very bad for a little bit, and then people started pointing out like, oh wait, no, this is an old photo, and then of course nothing materialized because he said it was going to be the next day, and then nothing happened. So yes. But the only reason why I'm bringing this up, because I don't even necessarily think it's worth bearing discussion, other than the fact that I've seen other places who posted the image and started like saying, oh, he's awful now, we have to boycott him, but then never seemed to like see the updates that said, no, this is a fake photo, or not fake photo, but it's an old photo, and this is This is not actually happening.
Which
So
I'm sure for some of them it's just ignorance.
yeah,
It's an awkward thing with the way Twitter works in that, okay, the thing gets traction and people see it, but then the update or the apology or whatever it may be that clarifies things doesn't necessarily get the same traction, so it doesn't reach everyone who saw the original thing, right?
Yeah.
So
I think it's worth mentioning just for the sake of saying no, it was bullshit. That's not to say that Johns is innocent of everything or that he'll never have a problem, but at the very least in this case, this thing is inaccurate. So it seems worth spreading that part of the story a little bit, since some people don't seem to see the second part. So worth mentioning. So there you go. You wanted to talk about Amazon and ComiXology, so by all means.
Yes, I do, because the official merger, I mean not merger, the site migration and app migration occurs this week, and it's a goddamn shit show of a mess already. Yeah. So this kind of came up this week when it realized that a lot of creators were getting worried, because if you buy a bunch of digital comics, do you subscribe to any series, Pete?
I used to, and then I stopped, and I can't remember why I stopped. I think I like going in on whatever day. I mean, it's not always like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Sometimes it's later in the week, just when I get around to it. But there is part of me that likes going in and just sort of like, okay, now I get to buy my books. It's like, it's like the feeling of going into a comic shop and taking them off the shelves and just being like, this is the one I'm looking for, and this one I'm looking for. It's
no, I get it. I'm the same.
I like the process of doing it. So I have toyed with it in the past of like being subbed, and it is kind of nice because they actually appear like in your account. Like at the time it was Wednesdays before they switched to Tuesdays for DC, but at the time, like the new books, you could search for them and buy them from like 9 a.m. UK time on the Wednesday on release day, but they'd actually appear like in your account to read at like 7 a.m. So if you were subbed, you actually did get them a little bit earlier, just because they sort of automatically went in. But other than that, like there's it's digital comics. There's no real reason to feel the need to subscribe.
Well, I think there are valid reasons for it for a lot of people, in that a lot of people forget, to go every week. They miss books, and then they're like, "Oh, where's this?" And for some people, it's just an easy way of routine, and even financially, it's like, okay, I can see all of these. This is what's coming out every time.
I think the other reason why you probably don't want to subscribe to books on ComiXology like that is just because sometimes they will include things in the subscription for that series that you don't necessarily want, like maybe an annual that you want to skip, or there's not an easy way to just say, I want to opt out of this extra special thing that you're doing as part of the series. There's no like easy way of doing that other than just cancelling the subscription and going back to it afterwards. So
I still think, like, though, they're good for a lot of people, even if we don't use them. But they basically don't exist outside the US after this week. So as of this week, anyone who has any subscriptions have been cancelled. If you're in the US, you can set them up again through the Amazon Kindle ComiXology storefront. That is, I think it's gone live now. We talked about that last week, but it's becoming, ComiXology will redirect to this page. I think this week is what they're saying. So you can set them up on there to subscribe. If you're outside the US, tough shit. Subscriptions are gone. You can't have them anymore. Because Amazon can't handle that, apparently.
What's weird about that is that Amazon's such a worldwide company that offers its services like all over the planet. It's kind of weird that there is something like that that's going to be US specific.
It's bizarre.
My general feeling about all of this, now that's something that might never get fixed because it sounds like one of those annoying things they're just never going to deal with. My general feeling, though, with the rest of the migration is that it's probably going to suck for a while, and then over time, a lot of the little things that people are annoyed don't exist will probably be fixed or added, and it'll smooth out.
But it's annoying given that those things exist already, and we're losing them. Because some of the other things that we're losing, sorting your books by series. Like, how at the minute, if you go on ComiXology, you can just click, the Batman, and book, and you click Batman, and then all the Batman comics are within there. It's like a subfolder.
Yes.
That's going. So you won't be able to do that. Smart List, if you use the app, not being there for the foreseeable future. So Smart Lists are how I use ComiXology quite a lot, because I just say, okay, this is the recently purchased, currently reading, like in progress tab. and unread are kind of the ones that I tend to use in the smart lists.
Recently purchased is very handy for the new books, yeah.
Yeah. Their new advice is so, for example, you have to sort by recency, read or unread, and filter by in progress, and kind of just tick through the things that you want manually to filter through to get your options, which is a lot more hassle than just having the things there. Yeah. You can't archive books anymore, because I know a lot of people do that with books that they kind of don't want in their library.
Yep.
This is specifically for the web reader as opposed to the app. But if you read on a PC, on a desktop, in a browser, good luck. Just good luck. I don't know if you've seen the screenshots, but double pages do not work. They keep the side. So basically, you've got the single page that is essentially the full page in the middle of your monitor. The way that would work at a single page. It then essentially letterboxes the top and bottom and puts the double page just in the middle of that as well. So it's a very small box in the middle, and there is no way to zoom in. You can get a guided view if you really want it, but you can't actually zoom in. And when you do go to guided view, it doesn't go to a higher resolution image. So you're still stuck reading low res text just zoomed in, basically. Doesn't really apply to DC and Marvel because they don't do this. But if you get books that have DRM free, the ability to back up and download your books DRM free, which a lot of other publishers do, that's going away. You'll be able to still get the ones you've already bought, but all the ones that you've had before are gone. Or new ones will be gone, sorry. There's just a lot of problems that are just unnecessary, and it's clearly a far inferior experience for at least the foreseeable future. And the problem is with Amazon, because we've seen them do this with other services that they've taken over, like Audible, or even something like Goodreads, where they purchase them and basically updates stop. We saw this with ComiXology as well, where updates just didn't really happen, right? The site, it hit a look, it hit a style, and that was it. And yeah, then things kind of got worse, and then the experience didn't get any better. And because it's Amazon, there's no one there to compete with them because they're the only ones with all the money and the links of these publishers. So because there is no competition, how many of these problems will actually get fixed remains to be seen. Yeah. So honestly, I'm really not looking forward to this new integration this week.
I mean, nor am I, but like, there is no competition. There's nothing you can do about it, really, other than just complain at them and hopefully they fix some stuff. So I'm just not. I'm not spending effort thinking about it. Is what I'm saying.
I mean, I am, because it's a service I use, multiple times a week. So it's annoying, and I'm sure that probably goes for a lot of our listeners. And that, hey, no, this is annoying, especially like the buying things. That's so frustrating if you're a person that uses subscriptions. I know a lot of creators are unhappy because it means that there's probably a lot of people that won't migrate subscriptions, that won't regularly go and click buy because they don't remember to. They just have it pop up that they're essentially losing out on money now.
Which is funny in a way, because it's kind of acknowledging that X portion of your reader base wasn't actually reading your comic. They were just sort of forgetting they were subscribed to it and letting it charge.
That's not necessarily true. There's a lot of books that I forget about, that I like, not forget about, but I would forget to buy if I didn't have my shop pull it, because I don't check every week. Oh, this is what's out this week. I just trust my shop to pull my books, and I enjoy those books. I love those books. I read them, but if I didn't have my shop pulling them every week, I would miss issues. I know I would, because I don't.
But missing issues is irrelevant for digital, though. That's not like the same debate. Because with digital, if you realize you've not been getting the issues, you can go back and just get them at any time.
It reminds me when to read them. And two, I think this does apply to digital in terms of from a creator standpoint, in terms of your financial gain. If that person doesn't notice at first, because they're the type of person who does just get that, or maybe they think it's gone on a break or it's delayed or whatever. If they're that sort of person, and then by the time they come to it, the price has dropped by $1, you as a creator are making less money from that sale when you wouldn't have been before.
Yeah.
Which sucks.
I don't. I just don't have strong opinions on this for whatever reason, even though it's going to annoy me just as much as anyone else. Um, I don't know. You've been bringing this up for months, and I'm just sick of talking about it.
Because it's the biggest shift in digital comics in years.
I'm just there's only so much there's so much things to complain about, and I'm just I just don't have it in me. I don't have it in me to go on a tirade about this. Something else will spark a fire in me later, but I don't have it in me to rant about this.
We'll see how you feel after using it.
We'll see. Yeah, okay, well there you go. I suppose that's technically also still news. Here endeth the news.
Definition
segment.
of news.
Yes. So yeah. Oh well, it's a weird week, alright? What do you want from me? It's weird times. Time to get into the comics already. It feels odd, but here we are. We're going to start with Detective Comics 1052. Mariko Tamaki writing with Max Raynor on the art. Next part of the Tower storyline. And we kind of see another perspective of the event that happened towards the end of last issue, which is kind of Murdy and Chasey's perspective of the outbreak and then everyone going to sleep from Psycho Pirate. With a bit more context to her and some more investigation stuff from the Batgirls and Batwoman on the outside. So that's the main gist of the story in this one. How did you feel about this chapter?
It's another solid chapter. I did feel the pacing a little bit on this one again. I think with probably about half the issue, kind of recovering events from where we were up to last time. Obviously, it does go beyond that, and this does have the extra perspective of being from Chase. So I'm not saying it's completely without merit, but I definitely felt like half of this book, give or take, is kind of where we were up to last week already, and I was wanting a little bit more advancement.
I mean, I'd probably agree this might be one of the least fulfilling issues, I suppose. I mean, and that sounds even more negative than I want it to. I just mean it's maybe on the lower end of the issues so far in the story, just purely because it does, like you say, not necessarily go past too much where we were last week. But I do actually really like the idea of getting the perspective of exactly how both Chase and Huntress both kind of reacted during this, and how Huntress snaps into action immediately because she's back to being herself because all the controllings went away.
We kind of saw that last week, though, right?
We saw parts of it, but I mean, this is we see the moment she wakes up here, right? Because she's in talking to Chase, and she immediately just snaps into Huntress mode and goes to try and find Dick or call Nightwing or whoever, and she says, call Dr. Fro, tell her what's going on. So there is kind of this seed that's planted that sort of leaks out into the Bat family, so they get a hint that something went down. Because the official story is there was a gas leak, they say, and Oracle's checked and it's no, there was no gas leak, there's nothing like that going on. But I think the panic of seeing Chasey's perspective, her trying to dial the phone and being terrified as all this fighting's going on outside, is pretty good. It's one of those things though where it is half the book until we're kind of past the same thing we ended with last time, and it actually took me a minute to realize, we're doing the same event. We're doing this is the same one from the end of last issue. It's because at first I was like, is this happening again the next morning? It feels like this is a bit weird. I was like, oh no, this makes more sense. It's the same one.
Yes, and it's not that it's without merit, because there is a new angle that it's telling here. It's just I wanted a little bit more out of it, I think, by the end.
I think Joe, honestly, Joe, I think it probably is. I think the two places where it feels a little excessive is probably one that there's kind of a little flashback to Meridian at the start, talking about encountering Batman, and then also that we go through all the steps of Psycho Pirate, sort of putting everyone to sleep again. I think those are the two things. I think if it was just 4 pages showing you Meridian's side of this, where she's in the office and it all kicks off, and then she's scared on the phone, I think all that stuff's super valid, and all that stuff feels essential to what you're sort of building with the story and the all the building and all that. But it's those extra elements that maybe it is just a case of okay, this is 12 issues, they've mapped out the story, and the chunk that's mapped out for this part was just a little bit shorter than it needed to be, and
it makes me wonder, and I don't mean to sound really harsh here, because this will probably sound harsher than I mean it. Is this 12 issues because they had a 12-issue story and this is the 12 chunks? Or is it because that's a nice round 3 months of comics that we can have weekly, and now we need to... Maybe we had a 10-issue story that we're going to stretch out into 12.
I mean, I think... I don't think it's binary. I think there's maybe an argument here where it's like, okay, I've got an outline for this story and it's about this many issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they go, okay, well, you know, he said it's about 11, make it 12, you know, like, and it's like, okay, so maybe a little padding there, a little bit more extra atmosphere here or there just to sort of get up to that number or something like that. But it also could be a thing where maybe one of the ideas, like, oh, this doesn't quite work. Oh, so all of a sudden, like, there's maybe like a third of an issue that doesn't quite have something there. So, oh well, I'll expand on this a little bit then, and sometimes that'll work well, and sometimes you'll feel like it is maybe stretching things a little bit. But like I say, like most of like the meat of what's in this other side of this event is actually quite good, and I really like what it adds to just how scared she is. The idea that, you know, this information gets out to Batwoman, and the fact that she makes this phone call is relevant because you know, Dr. Ware's monitoring the work phones and he hears it all and like fires, you know, quote unquote Dr. Fro immediately. So like there's definitely advancement here, and then them looking into like some of the people who have gone missing. And you know, I really like the page of like, you know, this extra phone call she makes to Dr. Fro where she doesn't sound quite right. And then we see her, because she's like, oh, I'm so sorry I made that phone call. I was overreacting. And then we see, like, you know, Psycho Pirate and Ware right behind her. And he's like, you feel shame. You feel shameful.
I really like that bottom panel of that where he's just going, shame.
Yes.
And it's, you know, the close-up on her eye.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. Like, all that stuff is really great. And the idea that, because we know that like they've worked their magic on Nakano, because Chase is complaining early on Nakano's like starting to go ahead with things without her finishing a report. But then here you see they're now using it on her as well. So yeah. And then the other little touch that I did like, the one thing I did like them adding to the other Psycho Pirate stuff, is Dr. Ware realizing that he also got put to sleep, and he's like, wait, did you do it to me as well, you prick? And he's like, look, I had to quickly just knock everyone out. Like,
I was in a rush.
It's complex. It's hard to like specify who it's affected and not. So no, I liked all that stuff. So the Bat Ladies are looking into the stuff that's gone missing, some of the people that's involved, and some of these, you know, quote unquote movies, right? So they establish in this, they sort of clarify that a lot of these criminals are saying their violent pasts, they're remembering them as movies when they weren't really movies, and that's kind of
got a hint of in earlier issues.
Yeah, we were kind of speculating on that a little bit because they kept bringing up movies a lot, and it leads to them figuring out that maybe there's something going on in the underground city. That's where the base of this gang is. And sure enough, Batwoman, Cass, and Steph go down and beat the crap out of them and find all the supplies. So, you know, I enjoyed. You know, it was fun seeing them in action. Finally getting to do something, be proactive. That's kind of neat. Back at the tower, we see Huntress being kind of confused and not really understanding, you know, why her hands are bloody, what went on. She's getting like flashes of like moments of her fighting on the you know, before she get knocked out, and she starts chatting to Anna Volshin, who's also talking about like, you know, these movies that they're remembering, that there's something not quite right. And we know that Huntress, before they get knocked out, was sort of racing to try and find Dick or try and like find something to leave a message. And the final page here at the end of the story is that she wrote in blood under her bed, his hold is breaking. So again, you got this idea that everything's like slowly just leading towards disaster, like everything's breaking down, and this thing that's happened is going to happen again. It's going to be worse next time, and so on and so on. So
obviously we've seen how much worse it gets.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is cracking at the seams, and you know, this is the halfway point now, right? So
yeah,
it's presumably about to start kicking off in the next couple of issues.
Yeah, so I still like everything the story's generally doing. You know, it's just that thing where there's maybe a third of this issue that feels like it's maybe padding out the story a touch, but I generally liked everything else it was doing in the story, and I agree. And I love the all the Bat Ladies getting to be like the focus of the heroes here. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, Nightwing's not really knocking around much this issue.
No, you see him in there, you know, during the fighting, during the riot, but That's pretty much it. And even having Batwoman with the Batgirls just feels different. It's like, oh, this is kind of nice. And then Huntress being a vital part of it as well on the inside. It does kind of feel like a celebration of a lot of Bat family members who don't necessarily always get that much attention, and
yeah,
that's good.
It's kind of nice to use when they use detective for that stuff.
Yeah, that is. So I had a good time. With the story, the art. I mentioned the Psychopirate page. That's really good. He looks really ominous as he's saying shame and all that. Typically, I liked all the stuff with the fighting with the Batgirls and Batwoman. Plus, the setting of the underground city is kind of nice as well. Kind of like the vibe of that down there. Yeah.
Yeah, the only part of the art I wasn't massively keen on, and for that I really do like a lot of it, especially that Psychopirate stuff. Is the opening flashback with Meridian. I get that it's maybe trying to do a slightly different style to evoke that it's a different time period.
Yeah.
I just don't think it lands quite as well as the rest of the book.
Yeah, Meridian, who has a bomb strapped to her hand because the Joker's pissed that she's been given Harley therapy. This is back in the early days. Or
yeah,
that's what it sounded like anyway. Because she mentions that some psycho's girlfriend is now getting therapy from her.
And then broke up with him.
Yeah, so I suspect that's Harley and Joker. I mean, I could be wrong, but that was the first.
It's definitely the implication, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. In the backup, which has been ongoing here, is you've got the ginger kid. He's with Elliot in an ice cream shop, and in walks Jason Todd, doing some sort of casual reconnaissance, talking to them and finding out that they're working for Penguin. And that's Elliot's like, yeah, we kill people for Penguin. It pays great, and all the rest of it. And he informs Bruce later at dinner that Penguin's paying kids to murder for him, and Bruce is like, I've not heard any of this, and we know it's not true because the rest of the conversation with the kids is like, wait, why did you lie to him? He's like, because reputation matters, man, on the streets. People are going to believe the worst.
Basically, Jason's a gullible little shit.
Yes. I think what I liked about this is Bruce says, I'm going to go check it out, and then we see like Matches Malone at the Iceberg Lounge. I'm like, there you go. That's really nice.
Yeah.
I kind of love that we don't focus on that though. It's just it establishes that he's there, looking into it because he would be, but he's not the focus of the story. The kid is. So we stick with him, and then Elliot tries to convince the ginger kid to go in and help steal from Penguin, which we know Penguin's one rule really was, don't steal from Penguin.
It's a good rule.
And they're in snooping around. He doesn't really want to do it, but then they kind of get caught in there because Penguin comes running in because Batman's in the Iceberg Lounge.
And he'd picked up his gun because why not? So now he looks extra guilty. Yeah,
he looks really suspicious and guilty. And they set up that there's like a sort of like a trap in here where if you hit a button, like all these cages will come down. It's like a security system. So Batman comes swooping in, and the kid hits the button, locking Penguin with the Batman. And Penguin's like, why did you do it? Because part of me was thinking the kid was going to somehow earn Penguin's trust because Penguin has been relatively nice to him. But instead, he makes the choice to leave him with Batman and just leave in fear.
Because clearly he's a sociopath and probably, has some problems.
But then he runs into Jason, and Jason disarms him. And what's interesting here is he says that he recognizes him. He's seen him before. And Jason, obviously thinks, oh, he may be recognizing me from the diner, from the ice cream place. And what he actually means, though, because he mentions it on the next page, is that he's seen Robin before, but it was a different kid. Now it's a younger guy. And obviously, this is like, oh, so in his time in Arkham, when he broke out, some time had passed. Clearly, we've switched now to Jason from Dick. So it's interesting to sort of track this with a bit of the timeline and sort of see where we are.
Him in the back of the police car yelling that Batman's making an army of boys is kind of funny, but also kind of sad.
It's funny, it's sad. It also ties in nicely to what Scarecrow was doing effectively earlier in the story, which is kind of nice. But
you have to think maybe the lingering effects of that extreme dose is kind of going to play this up for him.
Yeah, even just this idea that this is his stance, though, is that he's scared of Batman. He sees Batman as villainous, and that he sees Batman as recruiting boys. And hell, even Penguin is doing that. Him and Elliot are been recruited by Penguin for kind of similar. I mean, it's presented in a more normal way because they're being hired in a sort of an employment role.
Child labor is cheap.
Yes, exactly. But instead, it's very like him yelling
the real reason Penguin does it, right?
so they're smaller than him. I don't know.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's the only way he has employees that he can tower over.
But I do think that last line's quite prominent, and it really sets up like his viewpoint and the idea that he sees Batman as this villain who's doing this horrible thing. It makes me just interested to see where this character's going, and as much as he is a bit unhinged, as much as he has some problems, ultimately I can kind of see why he sees this particular detail this way, and that it's unhealthy that Batman's training multiple young boys. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see where it goes. And Blanco's art is obviously still very good. A lot of this stuff at the end takes place in the red, which contrasts nicely with the dark, muted blues and greens of Penguin's office from before. So it's a nice contrast.
I feel a little bad for Raynor because his art on the main story is solid, like for the most part. So it's good. And then you just get to this stuff with Blanco, and it's like it steals the issue, doesn't it, in terms of just the visual style.
But I mean, the fact that there's only 8 pages per issue is why he's able to do this consistently.
Oh, yeah,
and even then, I'm sure he got ahead a little bit because that's still more than a full comic per month.
Yes.
So. But no, solid stuff. I'm still intrigued with where the story's going with the kid. It's done a really good job of making it intriguing and making me kind of see, okay, where does this fit into the Gotham mythos and the Batman mythos? Like, I'm curious. So, no, cool. All right, what you rating the main story?
I'll give the main story a generous 7.
Okay. And backup?
That's an 8 for sure.
I'm also going to go with a 7 for the main story. I wouldn't call it a generous 7. I'd say it's just a nice 7. But still digging the story overall. And then backup, I'd probably say just a nice solid 8. So cool. There you go. That's Detective Comics 1052. Take us on to Superman, Son of Kal-El, issue 8. Tom Taylor writing, Cian Tormey on the art. And we left last issue with John dealing with this giant monster who came from the sea, who was awoken from the sea, and also the Gamora core who showed up and just want to kill it. One of whom gets killed in the process of trying to intervene. And this issue is very much the end of the two-parter of like fighting this monster, and the debate of what's going on there. So it essentially boils down to John is constantly trying not to fight the monster, but this core keep engaging it in combat, and it just leads to like another one of them being killed. It leads to the monster retaliating. The monster jumps up and back down, which creates a tidal wave at one point. So John and Aquaman have to like try and deal with that. John goes down, like there's like a Superman clap at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, this was one of the only elements of the issue I'm really not keen on. Which this is going to sound petty.
From you? Petty?
Yes,
Never.
I don't like when Superman in general is just able to deal with what is essentially a natural disaster. I know this one was caused by a monster, but just okay, he can deal with tsunamis. I don't really like that idea as much, because then it's like, well, why, it's especially with things like tsunamis where you do tend to have enough warning before they hit land. Why is he not always dealing with it? It's different to why is he not stopping all crime, I think, whereas because natural disasters, they're pretty massive, right? And I think we've even seen issues like the first issue of the Greg Pak run, which was the 0 year tie-in with the storm and the floods, and it ultimately was just like, no, he's just as powerless in the moment as kind of everyone else. Doesn't matter how much he tries, there's only so much he can do. And I don't know, I think it's because I prefer that take on Superman, that this moment kind of falls a bit flat for me.
I think, to try and defend that a little bit, I would say that two things. One, is it as big as an actual natural tsunami? So is he stopping something to the same extent? I don't know. Two, it does look like the city does still get pretty flooded, from the panels we get towards the end of this. It still looks like there's,
it doesn't negate it entirely. Absolutely. Yeah.
It still looks like they're under like, a meter or two of water. So it's not like he's completely solved it. He's just stopped it from killing everyone, but he's still not made it.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying he like fixed the problem entirely. Absolutely not.
So I can see what you're saying though. But yeah, so we have like the Bendix, calling the shots, and like he's basically manipulating the core every turn, every time like John, because John multiple times in the issue tries to tell them, tries to reason with them, say do this instead, try and hold your, don't kill him, don't do this, don't do that, and every time like you just it like almost cuts to Bendix as he says, yes, we can technically follow that request and use it to our advantage, and then like they'll do something else instead, or he'll say, oh no, we have to show our force, we have to show how capable we are, so. Have them do that.
Yeah, and we're seeing they're being remote controlled, essentially.
Yes, and that's sort of further established later when he gives his speech.
It is.
Yeah,
we see it here, like when they're asking, "Oh, should we go back to the city?" The guy asks. It's not one of the people out in the field. It's a guy in a seat with like a headset on.
Yeah.
Turns and looks at him, and so it's very clear that it's okay. These people are not of their own free will doing these things.
I do love the visuals of the monster jumping up, though. It's a nice touch that the title page is literally with a full page spread of the monster starting to rise out the water. Because it's called The Rising. So when it says The Rising Part 2, it's like, oh, there's literally something rising on the page. Obviously, that's not what
I think the panel where it's like the photography shot of it in midair is a little bit goofy.
Sure.
Next page after the title.
Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
But overall, I really like where the panel is landing.
Yeah. Eventually, Arthur, OG Aquaman, if you will, shows up as well to sort of just with the clean up and helps out at the end. And
they get to the point where he goes and grabs a chunk of the seafloor and kind of pushes it back. The seafloor just being there to widen the surface area.
I actually did like the conversation that led to this, though, which is that because Jay says, can't you just push the monster back? You're strong enough, right? He's like, well, yeah, but I'm too small, so it'd be like a needle trying to push against an elephant. It would just cut through. So yeah, the idea is he has to get a nice big flat surface to spread out the force so that it's more of a gentle push. I thought, okay, that actually makes some sense. I get it. So fun stuff. And Lex is sort of watching on, and like, if anything, I would suggest that Lex, like, I feel like Lex would probably be like, okay, I need to intervene. My city's starting to take a bit of a pummeling here.
I think there's a point where Lex is like, all right, okay, I'm getting out. I think it's not quite there, but it was close.
Yeah, because he turns to Bendix and says, hey, Bendix, my city's sinking here. Like, just, I mean, he doesn't actually say do something or I'm going to do something about it, but I feel like that's kind of in the tone, is like, hey, my city.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely an unspoken implication.
So yeah. But yeah, so Superman, I mean John here when I say Superman, grabs the fist of one of the Gamora Corps, because there's only two of them left at this point, and insists that they go back to the city, and they kind of like use it as almost like a PR thing at this point, because when Superman does go back and he's like sort of like picking up like the bodies of people who have died and what water did make it to the city, Bendix has the course say something like, look at your Silk at the Dead, if you had just worked with us and didn't chose humanity over this monster, you could have saved these people. I think my favorite thing about this issue, though, and it's one of my favorite storytelling tropes actually in general when it comes to Superman, is that I think Superman benefits greatly from a third person narration as opposed to a first person narration. There's something about, in this case it's Jay and his like news report or his blog, or
same thing we've been getting on in the War World stuff, right? Telling the story of Superman.
And a lot of like classics will have Lois telling the Superman story that's going on, or it'll have someone else tell the story, or even if it's like just an unknown third person that's narrating the book. There's something about like talking about Superman and talking about the impact he has on everyone else, because on some level, I mean, I'm not someone who believes you can't relate to Superman because he's too powerful or anything, but I do think because of the importance of Superman, it's much more narratively potent to kind of relate to the people that Superman affects. So talking about Superman and having this like third person talk about how Superman's going to blame himself for all the lives that he couldn't save rather than all the ones that he did save, even though there's much less, even though the number he saved is much higher than the lives that he'd lost and things like that. I think the potency of that all just like really sings when you have a third person, because this third person voice obviously doesn't think this way. The third person voice is saying, no, Superman is a hero, he did the best he could, and he is like, everyone should be thankful for what he did. He is the untold lives he has saved, the hope he's brought to everyone, all the rest of it is unfathomable. It's epic. He should never doubt that he's doing good. But it's said with this tone of knowing that John is going to like blame himself for the lives that he didn't save. So you find yourself, one, agreeing with this voice, because naturally we are, because Superman's our hero and he's the main character. But I think given that perspective is really, it always sings for Superman stories. So doing it with John relatively early in his time as Superman is a really smart thing to sort of set him up. No, people are still looking up at him as this larger than life figure of this important being who is affecting the world of, you know, all that kind of thing.
Even from a non-storytelling perspective, just looking at the real world implications for us as the reader of using this, is if it's been, you know, including the future state issues, you know, coming up about a year of having John as Superman, right? But that's still, in the grand scheme of things, of comics, relatively new. I think having this, it's about reaffirming that no, this is Superman. It feels like a Superman comic because it has that same angle that a lot of the good Superman comics do. So, you know, by treating him in the same way that it does Clark, it feels like, you know, this is Superman. Yeah,
I think that's a notable change and something that makes a lot of sense. I think another thing I like about this is that, you know, if Jay is going to be like the version, like in the same way that the Daily Planet and Lois and Jimmy were to Superman and spreading the good story of Superman, the idea that we're in a new generation, it's a younger Superman for a new generation and a new world. The idea that it's online social media and vlogging and YouTube and like more like amateur news that's spreading his story, because that's what the new world is and that's what new media is. Tying that to the new generation of Superman, I think is a really smart little touch that works. Even if you do cringe a little bit from time to time when they use like a fake name for a social media or something like that, I think it does work.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, they've kind of played this with Superman a lot over the years in updating his news format from print journalism to TV to...
Yeah. I do think thematically you should stick with newspapers for Superman, even if it doesn't necessarily reflect what most people actually consume these days. I think it's kind of nice to keep him tied to newspapers and have John be tied to social media and things like that. And I'm not saying...
I agree, and I think having John enables them to do this safely now without worrying about that so much.
And I'm not saying that you should never mention social media with Superman or never mention newspapers with John. Like, by all means, you can still reference them from time to time. I'm just saying that as the main thing that is brought up often, like, you know, thematically tied the new stuff to John and vice versa.
And it's fine for Clark and Lois to be print journalists primarily, but as with every print publication now, they have an online presence, which is just as important, if not more so.
Yeah, the articles are still online.
That doesn't necessarily mean they're social media based. It just means they are digital. So I think that's fine. You can do that with Superman, but that's still a far leap from having, I don't know, essentially viral TikTok videos, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, because the ideal idea with Jay is that he's got this, you know, news vlog that he does.
Ad hoc live streams and stuff, right?
Yeah. He's got like a live stream thing that he does. So I like that. As a touch. After the events of everything, we go to a speech from Bendix, who's introducing to world leaders his project, The Rising. He says, because of these, and he pulls out an image of the Justice League and says, because of these assholes, like, you know, we're not in control of our own fate. We're at the mercy of these gods who think they can decide things for us. And I do love that he brings up the Suicide Squad. He says, hey, the Suicide Squad, Task Force X, great idea, right? Great idea to use these villains, and they had bombs in their necks, and that's how they controlled them. But how about we actually have superpowered beings that we can completely control? They can't just, you know, run off the handle. They can't, you know, like have these motivations that are scrupulous and whatever. So instead, we have made super metahumans that are completely and utterly controlled by us, to the point where they're just like slaves. They're mind controlled by them. So, which obviously brings up a lot of moral questions, because you know you could have easily done this story and made them robots, and then it'd be okay. That's why they're all controlled like drones, but they're not. They're people.
The point is they are superpowered people, right?
Yes.
That is very clearly the point.
And you know, so their free will's been taken away. They're being controlled. I'm sure that's some of the themes we're going to be playing, and we've been playing with those themes anyway. Because you know, ever since the start of the first arc, it's been Bendix has been experimenting on these metahumans and using them as weapons. But now he's got at the point where he's just straight up mind controlling them like puppets. So,
Yep.
So yeah, big things been set in motion. And then Jay and John are on the top of the Daily Planet building at the end, and John accepts to join the Truth after hearing Jay's report on his phone about what happened that day, and thinks he can do some good working with him. So yeah, again, even then, this is kind of like his Daily Planet. He's joining this weird group of, I don't know, conspiracy. Not conspiracy. I mean,
that sounds harsh, doesn't it?
Yeah. But they kind of have that vibe, and they're a group of people who are trying to expose things, but they're actually exposing real things as opposed to...
It does. And that's not to say that every conspiracy ever is false, because obviously some of them have turned out to be real, but it has connotations when you say conspiracy.
There's a lot of crazy. There's a lot of crazy ones, right? Let's just put it mildly. So no, I enjoyed the issue. I think the action is good. The general idea, like I say, I think the narration and it was there last issue, but it was really heavy in this one. I think the narration really sat with me quite well in this issue. It really felt like a Superman comic and not just John pretending to be Superman. And I'm not saying I felt that the whole time, but this felt the most Superman he's ever felt to me.
I'm going to say it has often felt like that the whole time, but I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think John feels that way.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. But I didn't want to imply that I'm sitting going, he's not really Superman. He can call himself Superman.
No,
he's
no,
not.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't mean that either. I just think there is intentionally a feel that he doesn't feel like Superman because John doesn't yet feel like he deserves to be Superman.
It was the same when Dick became Batman, and he felt like he was inadequate. He was doing like a pretend voice, and he didn't.
So some imposter syndrome going on, right?
It's natural that he doesn't feel like he's living up to the mantle and that kind of thing. But I think this issue felt like a Superman comic to me, as opposed to a comic about John Kent, and that's good. That. Yeah, that's an important, I think, step. And I don't know, they don't all have to feel it this way, but I think if we get one of these from time to time that just make it feel really, no, this is Superman, I think that's really nice. So that's good. All right, what are you giving it?
I'm going to give this one a 7 as well. I think it's a pretty solid issue. I'm knocking probably like half a point off, maybe just because of my own personal preferences when it comes to Superman with the tsunami. But I mean, yeah, it's nearly as good as this book has been pretty consistently.
I don't want to give this an 8. Like I say, I think it feeling like a Superman comic is a really impressive little feat that, I think covers up anything else in the issue that I might not be as in love with as a specific detail. But generally speaking, I think it is going places, and while I didn't fall in love with this as much as, say, Taylor's Nightwing book, which is like just perfect basically from the first issue.
I believe the next issue of Nightwing, which is the start of the 2-part crossover with this book.
I mean, I don't know why you sound so unsure. It says next time we start our story in Nightwing as a crossover.
Well, I wasn't looking at that. I couldn't remember if it was the next Nightwing or if it was this, then Nightwing.
No, the next one's Nightwing. It says at the end of this issue.
Okay, fine. I wasn't looking. Sorry.
It says read Nightwing 89 or whatever number it is before you read the next Superman. So there you go.
I think it's like next week, to be honest.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah. So they're not in the same month then. So it's this month's Nightwing and then next month's Superman. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. There you go. All right, cool. No, good issue. Good stuff. Batgirls, issue 3. Becky, Cloonan, and Mariko Conrad writing with Jorge Corona on art. I read this. Connor's dropped it. And
Matt has dropped it as well, by the sounds of it, on Twitter.
I mean, we'll see if he confirms that next time he's here.
Maybe
but,
he was talking about it on Twitter with me earlier in the week, and he was just saying it was really wordy and he wasn't enjoying it, and he was probably out. I don't know whether he'll stick to that or not. Who knows? Because this is Matt.
It's Matt, yeah. We'll see where it goes. I mean, honestly, it is probably the weakest issue of the 3 so far, which is a shame. I think one of the big problems of the book, which is becoming more evident with issue to issue, is that it is determined on spinning all of the plates kind of equally, rather than just focusing in on one and letting the others be background stuff. So we in this we have the tutor, who is this artist who is also using fear toxin to control people. The cliffhanger issue 2 was Steph being controlled for a little bit, which she kind of gets snapped out of it. And the best thing about this book by far is the interaction of the 3 Batgirls and their chemistry and the dialogue. For the most part, there's one really weird bit of dialogue later on, which I'll get to. But But you've got the Twitter stuff, you've got the serial killer stuff, which admittedly is just background for the most part. It's more of a running joke that Steph's just convinced this neighbor is the killer, even though it's like an older man, and it's like, I don't believe he could pick up a body. Like, I just don't think it's possible. But then the other stuff, of course, is the Saints, who are sort of still in the picture, and Seer, who is controlling the Saints, but also feels slightly separate in the sense that like the way he eventually interacts does feel a little bit different at the end of the issue. So it feels like it's spinning a lot of plates, and it's a bit overstuffed because of that, which is kind of a shame. But because the actual fight with the tutor at the start, where there's a lot of smoke, a lot of green smoke being sort of introduced into the panels because he's spraying them with stuff, is a little bit weird. And then it's like, oh, let's just go home. We've done all we can for tonight. It does feel a little bit stop-starty in that sense, in the way that it keeps kind of like sort of just having them leave situations, and then it's like, okay, let's regroup. Which I don't necessarily have a problem with them having cooldowns between things, but it does kind of feel like it's happening like too often, too quickly in the book. But the main part of the issue, though, is that once they're back and they're debating all the things that are going on, is that they're going to this art show on a ship because they're showing off some of they think the tutor might strike. So they're going there to that. Babs is talked into going, but Babs goes in as a civilian in a dress, whereas the other two are going in sort of like actually, in costume, waiting for the tutor to strike. There was a plot thread in the first two issues that a lot of the neighbors in the neighborhood were getting their stuff stolen. An electrical device here, a gadget there, something. They go to this art show and there's like a big sculpture made out of all the stolen items, so they all start yelling that it's their stuff. Some of which makes sense, but some of it's a bit weird. Like someone yells out, "That's my X station." So I was like, how do you know it's yours though? I mean, like if video game consoles in this world are anything like the real world, then like you can't look at a PlayStation 5 and go, "That's my PlayStation 5." Like unless you have like engraved it or something, they all look the same. You can't look at it and go, "That's mine. Mine was stolen, so that must be mine."
I mean, maybe it has some distinguishing features.
Yeah, unless you've like put a fancy custom thing on it or something.
It doesn't have to be that. You could just have a scratch down the side that is a specific scratch that
Okay, sure.
Is there.
So either you've customized it or you've not taken
Damaged it.
You've not taken care of it, and therefore it's distinct.
Well, it's possible.
Yes. So I was like, "That's my toaster," and I'm like, okay, there's enough variance in toasters though that I at least expect that. Well, it's not 100% it's your toaster. There's a good chance it is because there's so many different colors and shapes and sizes of toaster in the world.
Bold of you to assume I'd recognize my toaster without looking at it.
I mean, I'm not saying you would, but
I know. But I'm just like, my toaster's in my kitchen right now. If you, I can tell you it's black. I can tell you nothing else about it. If you give me a lineup of 5 toasters, I'd say I've got maybe a 20% chance of picking it.
Does it have buttons or dials?
Yes.
You don't even know that? Oh, Jesus Christ.
I think it's got both. Which doesn't help. I don't know. I don't use it that often. I just I put the bread in. I push the lever down. It pops up. I don't look at it.
Okay. So big part of comedy in the middle is that this guy from Bab's Days in Burnside shows up from her college. I don't know if this is a character who was actually in that part of the book, when that run was going on, or if it's just a new guy that's saying, hey, she knew him in college. So
what's the character called, do you know?
Oh, where are we?
Just on the off chance that I'll remember, because obviously I've read all the Burnside stuff.
Where's his name? Charles Dante.
There was a familiarity to Charles. So maybe there was something there.
He said he had longer hair back then. Now he's just got more normally short hair. So I don't know. But he's kind of flirting, and the Batgirls over the comms are kind of making fun of her and saying, "Hey, wait, is this an old fling? Are you flirting right now?" And she sort of like, and this is where the book shines, because she sort of says things that act as a response to both the conversations she's having in secret with them over the comms, but also him. And there's a couple of times where she'll say something to them that sounds rude to him, and there's a little bit of that going on back and forth. But the tutor is in the ship, and they end up fighting him. Steph ends up having to fight the fear toxin off again. She feels a little bit bad that she feels a little weak link because she's been susceptible to it twice now. And it's when they're leaving the ship that the Saints are watching with like sniper rifles and like, do we intervene? Like, what do we do? They seem separate from the tutor though, because they don't go after him, and they seem to sort of refer to him like he's not an important part of the story. I will say there is a nice moment in the art. Where is it here? I'm trying to find it. So when Steph's getting infected by the toxins, maybe a little bit, and Cass sort of like is sort of kneeling down next to her, and she looks up at the tutor, kind of pissed. Is it does this thing where there's a speech bubble, but in the speech bubble, it's like a little angry emoji instead. And it sounds like something that might be annoying. Like, if you described that to me, I might be annoyed by it, but it mimics the angry look on her face so well that it actually, I think, was quite funny and made it work. That I was like, okay, you know what? Especially since with Cass, like, she doesn't really use words, so the idea that she's got a speech bubble with just the emotion itself in the speech bubble, like mimicking the exact emotion on her face, is actually kind of a funny joke to me. So that was a nice little touch. I like that touch. But yeah, so yes, they go back to base. Cass returns like a cook pot to like a neighbor because she heard the guy complain that it was stolen last issue, so she leaves it outside of his door with a note. It's got a little nice, like, I did something good. Again, best stuff of the issue is the interaction. So when Steph's like saying I'm a weak link, I feel bad, Cass stands up and says, "No, you're not. You are strong," and points down with this really angry look in her face, like, "You are strong, damn it." Again, them sticking up for each other, like Cass really caring about Steph as like a sister type character is really nice. Definitely my favorite part of the book was these few pages, this chunk of pages. The ending though, which is Babs goes to bed. And she's looking at the business card because this guy was definitely flirting with her. But then Dick calls her and she's like, "Oh, hey, Dick." And like they kind of start flirting on the phone. And Dick says something like, "Do you want to come over and spend the night with me?" And she's like, "It's quite late," And he says, "Oh, but since we're already on the phone," and Babs says, "You're rather randy tonight, Mr. Grayson." And I thought that was a weird line. And then, like, he points out and says, "Did you just say Randy?" And then it turns into a full-on Austin Powers reference where she says, "I know, pretty shagadelic of me." And I'm like, what?
See, whenever I hear Randy, that's I am conditioned to think of Archer, because that whenever he needs a fake name, like an alias, Randy is always what he goes with.
There's a specific scene from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer that I always think of when I think of the name Randy. When they lose their memories and Spike thinks his name is Randy Giles and he goes on a rant about how it's a horrible name. But this weird, like, Austin Powers referencing this is the thing. This is not actually Dick. It turns out this is actually Seer with a voice modulator, and then kind of reveals, like,
that is Babs.
That is Babs, yeah. Babs is the one who says Randy and then says shagadelic. That is Babs.
See, the Randy, like, I can get, like, maybe she just said so. It was weird, but whatever, right? But the shagadelic, following over that's, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, all right, you're making your reference, but it's a bit weird. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like the idea that, their relationship's in a place that they are having flirty sex talk on the phone and stuff. Like, I'm okay to establish that that's something they do. And I know it's not really him right now, but the idea that she is in a place with him where she would say, like, kinky things to him on the phone, cool, whatever. But it was just kind of like, this is a bit specifically pop culture and it's like really weird old pop culture as well. Like, I was like 9 when this movie came out.
It's weird because this book, they keep going, it's aimed at all ages, which for the most part, I'm sure it is, right? And that's very, from what I've read of it, yeah, sure, it seemed perfectly fine for, younger people. How many younger people now have watched Austin Powers?
Mom, what does shagadelic mean?
Yeah, that's strange.
Hell, I can barely tell you what shagadelic means. I have a vague sort of idea.
A long time.
I guess it just means you're sexy more than anything else if you're shagadelic. But yeah. So it is definitely overstuffed still, and honestly, the worst part about it, which I've not mentioned, and this is maybe with the wordiness that Matt's going to complain about.
I found his tweet, which I'll read out after you finish.
Is that I mean, the dialogue's a bit wordy, but it's kind of witty wordy, so I don't have a problem with that so much. The problem is the weird narration, which is still there, which isn't any one of the characters because it's third person, but it's kind of phrased sometimes like it is one of them. So it's kind of confusing, and it's mostly unnecessary, and could just be like you could just dump it all; it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, I remember feeling that.
And it would just be better if it was just gone. But it's for some reason there's a weird part as well when it shows you the saints, you know, these soldier dudes or ladies that are on the rooftop. There's a bit of this narration that's thrown in here where it's like, hey, these characters were, you know, had a big introduction back in issue 2. If you haven't read that, then just trust us. I was like, okay, that was a bit excessive. And then
that was last issue.
And then you turn the page and it continues. It goes, actually, in second thought, if you haven't read issue 2, go back and read it now. We'll wait. And I'm like, what? Stop doing weird editor note things in this narration. It's odd. Stop it. It's too much. You're trying to put in too much wittiness into it. Like the characters being witty with each other is good enough. Although the Austin Powers references went a bit far, but everything else is fine. This is too much. This narration has to go. It's terrible.
Yeah. So yeah, I really didn't like it either. Yeah, Matt just said, I'm just going to read it out in his absence because, you know, he didn't give us any thoughts. So these are public thoughts. So, you know, I think I've reached my limit on Batgirls.
It was too shagadelic for him.
He goes, it's a shame because I love all 3 characters in the creative team, but the story just isn't working for me. For a standard issue, each one feels annual sized in the way it makes me go, how many pages are left? It's a bummer.
Yeah, it's definitely on the word. I think, and taking out that narration would maybe not completely fix that, but it would definitely help it.
I mean, it has to read at least 20% faster if you're not reading all that.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not dropping it yet, and I do love the characters, so I do want to kind of like keep having more of them in my, because, you know, while they're in Detective right now, that's not going to last, I don't think. So
this is going to become that book like what Legion was for Matt. But for years he's like, I want a Legion book, and then like 6 issues in, he's like, I hate this Legion book.
This is better than Legion, though. I'll say that. This is not as bad as that Legion book.
But you didn't like Legion to begin with, or you don't have any attachment to the Legion.
True, but there's definitely still things I like about this book, though. Even if I'm saying there's objective problems with what's going on right now.
That's fair, but I just think it would be funny if, because, and I say this with knowledge that this is going to happen to me probably soon. The knowledge that, okay, Matt's book was the Legion, and then he didn't enjoy it. It was bad. Your book was Batgirls. You've been asking for this specific concept for years.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I wanted Brian Q. Miller to write it, though, so I mean, you know.
Oh, yeah, but you wanted this book still, right? Yes. For me, it's, we're going to get that JSA book in the next year or so, and I'm going to hate it, and I'm going to be miserable. So I'm laughing now with the full knowledge that you will laugh at me in the not-too-distant future.
Life will find a way.
Yeah. Finds a way to disappoint us.
So the art is still pretty solid, though. If you've been liking the style of the first 2 issues, there's like no change. It's the same artist doing the same thing. It's very cartoony and expressive. Like I say, did a good job of like getting Cassie's like facial expressions through the mask down. You know, simple little things like that. Just really basically has a lot of character. So the art's still very good. Maybe the only thing I would say is that there's maybe a few too many panels in the layouts for some of the fight sequences. They feel maybe a little bit in the messy side, but the actual expressions and the characters and that side of the art is very, very good. And the colors are very, you know, vivid and pulpy and stuff. So, yeah. I'll give it a 6.5, I think. I'm not going to quite call it, you know, at that 7 of like good, but I will say it's still, I think, worth the time. But we'll see how it progresses. I mean, the problems could keep compelling, though. You know, so it's one of those things where I think each issue has been worse than the last, and I don't know if it's necessarily because they're actually getting worse necessarily. Although there's definitely more narration in this than there has been any other issues. It's more
narration, just bloody hell.
But I think it's maybe just more. You know, these issues do compound as time goes on if they're not being rectified. But I do generally wonder what will happen when it moves into like a new arc where it isn't spinning so many plots, because some of them will be naturally wrapped up. Does it introduce more so it's always got this many plots, or does it actually calm down a little bit? You know, that would be the hope, but we'll see. There you go. Batman Urban Legends issue 12. You read a couple of stories in this, so
Yeah, I
go
did.
on.
I read the Batman Zatanna story and then the White Witch one. Because those are the two I read last time. I'll start with the Batman Zatanna. It's not as good as the first part. It's not
Okay,
bad.
yeah.
Let me like get that out of the way straight off. It's not a bad issue because I think it is pretty much a full issue's worth. But it is notably weaker, a little bit messier, I would say. And it undercuts part of its final moment that I didn't really enjoy. But you have Batman Zatanna. They're at this site of this ritual that they have to do every year or whatever it is. And this time it's gone a lot worse. There are things coming through. Zatanna likens it to the fact there's this cut and it keeps popping the stitches open. So every year we come and and sew it back shut. But this time something's coming out with a meat cleaver and just bust it open. And the only way we're going to fix it now is we're going to need a full skin graft, essentially, is the way they liken it, as opposed to just sewing it shut. It's a bigger problem now. And there is a big 2-page spread that I found difficult to follow because it's kind of like one of those circular pages, or it's got it's split into a circular motion, and it has a lot of it has narration boxes across the top, and they move down in a diagonal pattern. So I was like, okay, this is the angle I read it, and you get to that, and then you read some dialogue that comes after, and then your eyes flick back across, and there's some dialogue back on the left hand side as well, which is actually a repeated mantra. Like one's Batman saying it, and one's Zatanna, or maybe they're alternating line between them each. I can't remember exactly, but it's the pair of them doing it, and it's a bit of an awkward thing where I didn't read it in the right order at first, because even though it's a circular page, by the time I got to the end of the because the third dialogue box on one side, I think what I was supposed to do was follow the circle around and read back up the other way, but nothing in that circle actually led my eyes that way. So I just saw, oh, there's more things on the left. So I flitted back up and read it left to right again for that section, which I realized was the wrong way when I realized it was backwards to the lines that were on the other side. And it was strange. So I don't know what the impression was supposed to be. Was it supposed to be this repeated mantra, like they were taking, one was saying it and then the other one, or were they supposed to be saying it at the same time? I didn't really get an impression of kind of how that dialogue was supposed to flow, and it's kind of probably the middle of the story, and it definitely kind of hampered the flow of the issue for me, which was a shame. But they kind of succeed, or at least for now. But it looks like something's come through, and it's hungry, and it's called EOS, and there's another one there already. These beings, and they look like people, but like with like demonic eyes, and they kind of feed on the life force of things. So he feeds on this dog. It's like this little corgi that's running towards him, and he picks it up, and it's like its energy drains from it and goes into his eyes, and it's just this. It disappears. You see this like shell, like a translucent shell of where it was. So I'm assuming that's all that's left of it. I don't even know how that works. If it's still alive, it's a little unclear. But there could be an interesting enough threat to deal with for sure. We have Batman and Zatanna that patch each other up. They're having a bit of a talk, and kind of gets to the crux of what their relationship is. Where every year they do this, and they feel each other's emotions for like months afterwards. And Bruce apparently always pulls away, and whenever he does this, he's like, "Oh, they don't even talk." And Santa's upset. He's like, "Oh, you don't actually want to be my friend or anything like that, because anytime you've got a chance to actually get to know me, when you can, feel emotions like this, you're like want nothing to do with it. So this time I've done it so that we're separated." And this is the part of the issue where I feel like it kind of ruined with the starting, because it's the intruder alarms go off. There's someone here. Batman goes to investigate. You have this, shadowy kind of sequence of, oh, there's someone down there singing a song. And it turns out it's Constantine, which is fine. And this would have played as a nice little moment where, because it's not clear who it is at first until Batman's swooping down, and then it does this kind of full page of Batman big with a cape spread coming down, and he's still not fully lit up, but you can see underneath, you can see the trench coat. He's got a lighter out, and oh, I see it's Constantine, but the first page is Constantine in a bar, being like, oh, Zatanna, what you got yourself into this time? Because he's seen the reports of something's happening. And I feel like it really undercut the mood of these final few pages, because we knew Constantine was in the issue because of that first page. I don't know, strange storytelling technique for me. So yeah, a bit of a disappointing issue, but not bad by any means. But yeah, that story gets like a 5.5 for me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one I read was the White Witch story. This was the Ram V one, which was the highlight last time and still is this time. And yeah, Anand RK on the art is just phenomenal again. This time it plays, she's being interviewed by, I assume, some psychiatrist. And she has a lot of code words and phrases that are like, okay, establish your personal code, and right, okay, and then who are you? And so it goes through how much you try to figure out how much this clone remembers. Do they know, White Witch? Do they know her actual name, Rhea? Do they know, where she was before, like what her job was? Just trying to establish what she knows. And we get, again, a little bit more of these flashbacks, which she's very unclear on. So it's very hazy, this stuff in the mountains with Bruce and Ghostmaker, and just bits of that past. But it boils down to the psychiatrist kind of basically going, no, you've got this eidetic memory and rapid comprehension. So basically, she can read really fast and remember all of it because of the memory. And they're assuming this combination of things is why she can remember all her, all her past, but she's not creating new memories. It's very Memento, where up to a certain point she can remember kind of everything, and then it hits this stage and she doesn't create any new memories because they keep killing her, and then they keep just getting a new clone, and those memories aren't being shared across, even though I get the impression they're maybe cloning her from after she's had these points, because there's clearly an implication that she can learn to get these memories across lives. Because the psychiatrist, she gives her a book. It's like, hey, you read it with your powers. It'll only take you seconds. Remember it all. And we remember by associating them with memories. And if you can associate this with this specific book, which is about this guy who is Soldiers of the Mist, who, this guy who, whenever he sleeps, he would lose all his memories. So the idea is, okay, there's a thematic link between this story and your life. If you can link that to your memory, you should be able to remember new things across your clone lives, and you'll be able to essentially free yourself from this prison. But Sam Saint comes in and drags the psychiatrist away, and then kills this clone of White Witch, and that's the end of the story. It's this very harsh, just execution style gunshot, up against the head, and then a bang, and then you just see some blood splatter on the pages of the book. And it's so moody and ethereal, this story. This art is stunning. And it's very much it says to be concluded, so I'm assuming this is just a 3-part story. Very interested to see how this ends with her, and how, or if she manages to break free of this cycle, and what that'll mean. And if we'll see more of this character going forward, because obviously this is Ram V's character, and he's writing here again, as he did in Catwoman, but will she be popping up in one of his future projects, or will someone else use her? I don't know. But either way, depending on what the end of this story is, I definitely hope to see more of her, because this is really interesting stuff. No, this story, it's a lot shorter. I think this is only maybe 10 pages compared to the 20 odd of the first one. But it's a lot tighter. It uses those pages really effectively to tell this really strong personal story. No, this is like a 9 for this story. I mean, I suppose I have to average the 2 out. it's probably only like a 7, maybe a 7.5, because this is a shorter story, so it has less weighting, but it is significantly better. So probably a 7 overall.
Okay, there you go. All right. Batman Catwoman issue 10, Tom King and Clayman. Clayman's back because he was off the last couple. It was Liam Sharp filling in for a little bit.
Wasn't your favorite Liam Sharp work, if I remember?
No, not particularly. Clayman's art is great in this. I'll get that out of the way first. It's very, very good. Unsurprisingly.
To be fair, it usually is.
It usually is, you know. Like, there's been one or twice where maybe like the one weirdly over-sexualized image or something's been in there, but other than that, typically very, very good. This sort of series rather has been a weird kind of journey in that it's felt like this weird kind of Elseworld, but also tacked on is kind of the end of the King's Batman run, but notably not as good as King's other prestige series. It's always kind of felt a little bit weird in that sense, even though there's been some very good moments in it. And it's sad that, you know, some of the stuff that was the most exciting early on, which was the introduction of Phantasm and the art associated with the Phantasm stuff, because ultimately the Phantasm involvement feels kind of minimal at this point and feels done and gone and like barely like a factor anymore. And this issue in particular is essentially a fight scene between Joker and Catwoman playing out in two timelines, and then in the future timeline, Selina and her daughter are having a fight of sorts, and they all kind of play out sort of side by side, kind of intersecting. And you know, there's moments where Joker's like lying on the ground, and like the top panel's him and the middle stuff, and then the right underneath the rest of his body is like his body lying in the snow from like the past and things like that. So there's some layout ideas there. I'll be honest though, like, you know, the gaps between issues and not necessarily it being the easiest stories to remember because it is jumping between these three time periods is like I actually wasn't sure reading this which Joker and Selina story were the sort of the present day set after the Phantasm stuff timeline and which stuff was set in the past timeline. It wasn't entirely clear to me reading this issue on its own which one was which. And it's a murky story ultimately, and it's felt a bit messier than some of King's other stuff, and I don't know if it's just going to read better when you can read it all in one go, and like I'm not having this issue remembering things from previous. But the two big points that come out of this issue is Selina and yelling at Joker in the various timelines. We find out kind of something she believes about Joker that's interesting. Now, it's not necessarily something that's confirmed, but it's something she believes about Joker, is that Joker isn't crazy. Joker isn't crazy like all the other criminals in Gotham are. Joker and Batman are actually a lot more alike than anyone else would think. Is that she believes that Joker, much like Batman, has made a conscious choice to be who he is, to hide himself, right? Because she always sees Batman as like, you know, Bruce being this scared little boy who's hiding behind this persona because he's waging this war on crime, and the Joker's kind of similar, and the Joker knows exactly what he's doing all the time. He's not crazy. He completely understands, and he's trying to evoke certain reactions. He's evoking a persona the entire time, but ultimately he's not doing it because he's a psychopath. He's not doing it because he's crazy and he's erratically changing his mind. He's just as smart as Batman is, and he's doing things knowingly in the same way that Batman is. So it's kind of like drawing this comparison between them. You know, and yeah, like you can. I don't necessarily think it's a completely ludicrous take. Honestly, I'm not saying it's necessarily the one that I would want to be canon and the one to prefer, but as a think piece, the idea that Joker isn't just a raving madman and he is intentionally choosing these things because it's the stuff that will evoke the most reaction.
It's kind of the is it Dark Knight Returns, the hyper sane. Oh
yeah, this is not the first time this idea's came up, certainly. But by no means am I suggesting
was that in Arkham Asylum? I can't remember.
It's definitely come up a few times throughout the years. This idea, that he's sort of more like again, it's like Batman being theatrical. This is just his version of being theatrical as the Joker persona. which is an interesting idea. I don't necessarily hate it as a think piece. I don't know if I don't know if I ever want it to be confirmed though, which is why I kind of like saying, no, it's just Selena thinks this. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but this is her perspective.
Which I think that's something that a lot of people overlook, and especially clickbait websites overlook. Is that
sure.
Just because a character says something or a character thinks something doesn't make it true.
Yeah. There's a nice irony as well, because he seems like the most crazy of all the villains. The idea that he's not actually crazy, in the same way at least. He's a sociopath, certainly, but he's not crazy in the same way that the others are. That he's random and crazy by design rather than actually just being random and crazy. So that's not terrible. It's an idea, certainly. So you've got that playing out. You've also got the stuff in the future where, at this point, Selena has been arrested for Joker's murder, but she's escaped. And Helena, as Batwoman, jumps out to stop her. And Selena basically picks a fight, calls her an ungrateful brat, provokes her, is actually satisfied when she starts to fight back. Because at first, Helena's kind of resisting and doesn't want to fight her. And it gets to this point where I'm just trying to skim through the issue here to get to it. Where she talks about Helena, how, like, I love you, you're my daughter, I'm proud, but listen to me, you are far more like your father. Bruce Wayne was a sad man, and I wanted him to be happy, so I said yes, I gave him the answer he wanted when the time came, but he owes me a debt. And says, do you want to know Joker's secret, why I had to cut his throat and watch him go? And I was like, okay, it's building up to her revealing something, and it never actually reveals it, but it adds more to it at the end, which it's a little concerning where it might go. Honestly,
so is this Selena saying all this?
Yes.
I'm not sure I like this take on Selena.
That's fair.
From an outsider perspective, just not reading the book, just kind of hearing bits.
I think the problem with Selena in this book, because I really like the exploration of Selena's like relationship with the Joker and how she shifted from being like a villain who'd associated herself with the Joker and the other villains to being more of an anti-hero who associated herself with Batman. I think exploring that was really interesting. The more the series went on, though, the more Selena has felt like a bit of a cold, cynical character who, even her relationship with Bruce, which is supposed to be kind of heartfelt, has felt a little bit cynical.
That what you've just said there, that what she said about, I said yes because I felt sorry for him, something along those lines. I don't know the exact thing you just said. But that feels completely at odds with what King did in his actual Batman run.
I mean,
it feels completely out of character, for assuming this is supposed to be the end point of that run.
I mean, it's one of these things where, though, is she saying this because she's trying to provoke something in Helena rather than because that's what, is it the truth, though? That's
the fair,
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but she says, he owes me a debt, and I get to ask as he asked, and you have to say yes. And Helena's like, Dad's dead, I owe you shit, I'm not him. And then she says, this is Selena, oh my love, my beautiful daughter, don't you know by now? And then the last page is actually just the end of the Catwoman and Joker fight. And then there's no like sort of conclusion to that. So I don't know what she's about to reveal necessarily, or what she's hinting at here. Like, honestly, part of me got worried and like, wait, are they going to try and reveal that Helena's actually Joker's daughter? That Selena, the Joker, had a thing? Because it kind of feels like it's building up to something like that, and I certainly will not.
They still could.
And I wouldn't enjoy that if that's where they go with it. So I'm not sure exactly where this is going. It's kind of it's funny. The most funny about this is the art is generally very good, obviously, in this issue, and there's a lot of interesting dialogue getting thrown back and forth between Catwoman and Joker as Catwoman kind of analyzes Joker and compares him to Batman, or even analyzes Batman when she's talking to Helena. There is some interesting character stuff he kind of sprinkled in throughout, but as a story, as an issue, it's a little bit frustrating because it is all just one big fight or three fights taking place sort of simultaneously between three timelines and intercutting constantly. And at a certain point, like, and part of this is just because I haven't been into this series the last couple of issues. It's kind of like teetered off a little bit as it's gone past the Phantasm stuff. It's kind of like veered away from what was kind of interesting about it, and Selena has felt colder. But then you add on to that the fact that I'm struggling to remembering what timeline is which, and I'm struggling to remember where these three timelines all left off last issue. It's feeling a bit messy. It's feeling a little bit like it's hard to kind of like get my head around and sort of keep track of where emotionally each version of Selina is in each part of the timelines. You know, the future one's a bit easier because it's so distinctly different, but the other two are really hard to kind of keep track of right now. So, I had a frustrating time reading this, honestly.
Out of interest, just on that question there about the, they're not distinct enough. Is that in the writing's not distinct enough between them, or the art isn't distinct enough between them, or a bit of both?
They're distinct in terms of being separate from each other in this issue, but I cannot remember which one was which timeline from the previous issue. So I don't know which one is the middle timeline and which one's the past timeline. And one Joker, because Joker's wearing a Santa outfit in one of them, so it's very easy to tell which Jokers, and Selina's wearing different outfits in each one as well. But I don't remember from the last issue if it's the middle timeline that Joker's wearing a Santa outfit, or if it's the past timeline where Joker's wearing the Santa outfit. And because they're both having fights in snowy locations and fairly similar like circumstances, I couldn't remember. So
yeah, makes sense.
You know, so there's a lot of frustration here, and it's not clicking quite as much as there's little elements of character study stuff coming through that I do kind of like here or there. It's definitely not that satisfying as an overall issue. It does in a lot of ways feel like one of those later Tom King Batman issues where it kind of had gone off the rails and just wasn't that fun to read anymore. It does feel kind of like that era of Batman again from King, unfortunately.
That's a shame.
So like for me, like the art is really good, but I really can't give it more than like a 5. Like maybe a 5.5, something in that range. Like I'm going to finish it now because there's only 2 issues left. I might as well get to the end and see how it wraps up. But it's such a weird thing though, because like, I mean, I know you're not feeling positive on Tom King in a general sense, but everything else he's done recently, I think I've been thinking is amazing. And part of me just feels like he should just stay away from like traditional superheroes at this point. And
does it in any, because this is obviously tied to his bat run, and even though you're saying it feels like periods at the end of his bat run with that messiness, does it make you in any way worried for his upcoming Bat mini? And I know he said this is a different take on Batman and that it's a bit more of a fun blockbustery thing, but does it maybe concern you?
It doesn't concern me, but only because I have no stakes. If I read the first issue or 2 of this new Batman mini and I don't like it, I can just stop reading it, and it doesn't. That's not a big deal.
I will say, I when that was solicited, I was fairly excited by that in the sense of, okay, maybe it's a different Tom King book, right? That maybe I'll enjoy. What I have learned recently is Tom King lies when he's pitching books. Because I learned that from his Substack book. You know, that one that he launched a couple of weeks ago. They was like, hey, it's a romance comic, and I was like, oh, cool, that's something different. I'll check that out. And yeah, yes, technically it's a romance comic, but there's a pretty heavy time traveling supernatural baby kind of heavy bent twist to it that definitely appeals more towards modern comics genre readers. But none of that was in the pitch. None of that was in any of the information about it. They was in the promoting of it. It was all just, hey, it's a romance comic, go check it out. And it was free, so I did. And it isn't until halfway through the issue where it has this drop and you're like, oh, you're doing this. And now I'm like, is he lying to me about the Bat book as well?
Well, there's no stakes in the Bat book. Like if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, I'll just won't read the rest of it, and it's fine. I'm not really that fussed.
There's more stakes in the romance comic, and I have to pay for the Bat book, and I don't have to pay for the romance comic.
Yeah, but I'm not concerned though, because I don't mind if it's disappointing. Like, it's disappointing, but only just because this new mini is disappointing, not because like I'm invested and it needs to be good because it relates to something I care about necessarily.
No, that's fair. It'd be disappointing in the sense of if you get excited for something like the other, except for the possibility of a good book, and then it's disappointing.
Well, yeah, but because it's a Tom King Bat book, I'm very not excited. I'm like very neutral because of how his Bat run ended and because of how Batman Catwoman's going. So, if anything, it can impress me quite easily because the expectations are very muted on the whole thing.
That's fair.
But Human Target is like knocking out the park. Rorschach and Strange Adventures were both knocking out of the park. So, I'm still very much pro Tom King. It's just very clearly there is the odd little misfire from him, but Heroes in Crisis being another one, obviously. But all these other big books he's done, loved them all. So, you know,
just because you haven't read a Mega Men yet.
Don't be too mad. King or Tom Taylor pretending to be Tom King.
See, I might enjoy the books more if that was the case.
But there you go. That's my thoughts on Batman Catwoman issue 10. Just kind of a frustrating time, and honestly, there's a lot of really positive reviews of this online from my quick glance I had. And I didn't really get why. A lot of them are just praising how good the art is, and I'm like, yeah, the art is pretty good. But I don't think the comic is that enjoyable to read that much right now. So it's a shame. But there you go. But yeah, that will take us on to the part of the show where we pick our favorites of the week, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and top potentially 5 books most weeks, but not this week.
I don't think either of us have 5, do we?
No, I think I read 4 and you read 3.
I read 3. If I separate the 2 urban legend stories, I've got 4.
So yeah, it's light week on books. Also, this is the first time I think in a long time we have started this section before the 2-hour mark. So
yeah, combination of there's only 2 of us, so
yes,
inherently less comments
and less books. So
less books, and also not that much news.
Yeah, to be honest, we're actually pretty close to 2 hours though, which I didn't think we'd even hit that long. So you know what, I'm not feeling too bad.
Add it out a little bit more with some sports talk.
Oh, I really do not know. Go on. What's your favorite panel / moment of the week?
I genuinely thought you were about to go on then. What's your sports talk?
Never.
I was very confused for the first half of that sentence. I was like, why are you actually letting me do this? No, I'm going with the execution from the end of the White Witch story in Urban Legends. It was very effective.
Very nice. I guess I will go with I'm almost tempted, even though that I wasn't like super high on the book overall, to go with the emoji speech bubble for Cass and Batgirls because it was such a fun little moment out of nowhere. But I think, in second thoughts though, I will probably just go with someone from Detective or Superman.
I imagine if it's Detective, you're probably picking something from the backup.
Yeah, potentially. No, you know what? I'll go with Superman. I'll go with the moment where the big monsters started to rise out of the water. That full page spread. It was a nice big epic page. Notably, there's not a lot to pick from this week, so
there's not that many books. No.
Yeah, I'm putting a bit of thought into that to get there, but I'll go with that. All right. Cover of the week. Do you have something?
Yeah, I'll shout out a couple of the nice covers. I think all the detective covers are nice. All 3 of them are gorgeous, and I think I like the Batgirls variant. Not that I actually like it. I just like how much I know people hate it. So that makes me like it more.
I'm not even going to look at it. There's no point in
It's a very
myself.
chibi Galentine's Day thing. But I'm going to go with the Urban Legends variant, the White Witch one.
Fair enough. I'll shout out the variant for Superman, the Travis Moore one with Superman and with Aquaman.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I think that's pretty nice. My pick though is going to be the regular cover for Detective, which is the sort of the red batarang with the reflection of Batwoman in it. I think that's a really nice.
I do like that one, and the color choice as well, with it being Kate, is nice.
Yeah, it's just this is a really nice cover, a really simple. And I like that on one side of the batarang it's like a, well, not white, it's like a cream, and then the other side is black. So you got this sort of two-tone kind of effect from it as well, which is really nice. So that's my pick for cover, and then our art of the week. What you got?
Can I pick the White Witch story from Urban Legends?
Sure, why not?
That would be if not that, I'd have to probably just go with Detective. But I mean, there's not much to choose from, is there?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be tempted to say Batgirls again, but it did get a bit messy in places. But it's definitely very stylistically, it sticks out. And Clay Mann's art's pretty good. and Batman Catwoman. But I think I have to go with Detective, just in the sense that I like the art in the main story, I like the art in the backup, and there wasn't any moments where I had a problem really, so I'll go with that. It's a very muted selection though. They're all very muted selections because there's not a lot of books.
I feel that about a lot of this week's choices in general, not just art, just in general. That there's not a lot of books, and it's not that most of them are bad books, but they're not standout books. It's a fine week.
They're not standout issues, and that's okay. They're not always going to be the best of the best, but all right, rank your books then. Go, on you go.
Am I splitting the urban legend stories, or do I just count it as one thing?
One thing.
Oh well, if I'm doing that, I guess Detective Comics comes first, and then I guess Urban Legends, maybe that story just about pulls it up above Superman, Son of Kal-El. But I mean, they're pretty close, to be honest.
And I mean, I'll actually put Superman on top, and then Detective, and then Batgirls, and then Batman Catwoman.
Yeah, it's the backup pulling Detective up for me as well. That it's the backup that notably puts it, above the others.
I mean, that's fair. I think I think I mean, I'm considering that a little bit, but ultimately I'm kind of weighing up more against the main story than I am main story plus backup. But yeah, I mean,
remember to be jotting down your scores this week?
I did have noted them all down.
Usually I can see you doing it, but I didn't notice you this time.
I think it's probably just because there's less of us, and it was very quick. Maybe I'm just getting better at it. Maybe it's getting smoother because I'm just
maybe it's just becoming a bit more of an instinct.
Yeah. So there you go. So I'll tell you what's coming next week from DC Comics then. So coming up next week we have Detective Comics 1053, as you'd expect. We got Nightwing 89. They started that crossover that we mentioned between Superman and Nightwing. We got The Flash 779. Maybe Matt will be up to date for that issue. He's getting closer.
Yeah, it's possible.
He's getting closer.
It depends how busy he is helping his brother, I suppose.
We got Justice League 72, Wonder Woman 784, Batman the Knight issue 2. We got Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow issue 8. So that's the end of another Tom King book, which has been pretty damn good. So looking forward to that. We got Green Lantern issue 11. We have Aquaman the Becoming issue 6, Batman vs. Big Beta Wolf in Gotham issue 6, Nubia in the Amazons issue 5, Suicide Squad King Shark issue 6, Refrigerator Full of Heads issue 4, DC Horror Presents Soul Plumber issue 5, and then of course we have Scooby-Doo Where Are You 114 and Mad Magazine issue 24. I will say I do plan and because I never read the last issue of Refrigerator Full of Heads, I think based on time last month, but I have been meaning to catch up on that, so I should hopefully be reading that issue.
If you do, I think that leaves us at 7 books in total, assuming no one's reading Green Lantern.
I think Matt dropped that, did he not?
I think he did. That's why I'm not 100% sure, but that's 7 books if that's the case, which is, I mean, not a huge week, but it's not tiny.
Yeah, but we're going to have Solstice next week for sure, so
that is true, yeah.
So we'll have plenty to talk about next week on the show. So that's what's coming next week. I'll take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Treisman, and Alison M. Fordyce. They are Patreon producers for the month. You can of course support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and help keep all the content coming. And of course at the $5 tier you get the show sometime late on a Saturday, early before all the public get it, sometime on a Sunday. So go and have a look and see if you're interested in supporting the show that way. You can of course support us for free by liking, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications on YouTube, or rating the podcast 5 stars with a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. But that is it. And if you're interested in the torture of me,
who isn't,
for Valentine's Day on the Melfuzz Movies channel, there's going to be reviews. Screams After Midnight is going to have a review of Twilight Eclipse, the third Twilight movie. Of course, we already did the first 2. So if you want to see me being tortured and miserable, you can check out that. And also, there's going to be a review of the entire 50 Shades of Grey trilogy that I did with special guest David. So
I'd just like to say I'm disappointed on behalf of the viewers that you aren't spending Valentine's Day itself live streaming the last Twilight film. I can't remember the name of it, damn it. Both parts.
Both parts. I don't know. I need to
Both
milk.
parts.
I need to milk that for everything it's worth. There'll be goals for each part. You're not getting one Breaking Dawn
Super
part.
session.
No. That's not happening. But yes. So by all means, go check out the other content and stuff. But that is me. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.